All right, let's talk a little bit about what happened this week in AI. So, there are a few things that I wanted to talk about, but really the big thing that kind of came out was right around, more and more this is going to become important. It's like who's building the AI, who controls it, and ultimately who regulates this. This is a global technology. And while the U.S. and ever increasingly China is putting their thumbs on the scale, ultimately, what is happening here, especially in Silicon Valley, right now controls that conversation. And it's very important to know what's happening. And one of the things that really got rolled out this week was GPT 5.2. And I don't know if you all have had a chance to use it. I know that it says that it's the best on the benchmarks, create it, it's doing great on the AGI benchmarks, but just from the straight up just vibe test, I think it sucks. I think it absolutely sucks. This has been one of the worst model rollouts that I have seen, and I think that they've just gotten worse since GPT-5. I find myself not using OpenAI's models. I see myself using them less and less. I literally asked it, I didn't even know that 5.2 had been selected, and I asked it a simple, just give me some elf on the shelf ideas for my kids. Yes, I was trying to get some ideas. Something that, hey, just give me some random ideas for this. It took 15 minutes of thinking to give me some just very vanilla, stupid ideas. Now, I know that the goal of this is not creating elf on the shelf ideas. I know that. What this is good at, and what I haven't had a chance to test it out on, are coding tasks and planning tasks and long running agentic workflows. I think that this model has, in just my original testing, has been overfitted for long running tasks. So for instance, where we kind of have, ask ChatGPT for an answer, it gives you back a question. This is really, and I think almost too overfitted for really thinking through a problem. And really trying to do these long running agentic workflows. And we're starting to see this with the release of, not just GPT 5.2, the Kimi K2 model, 200 tools. You saw this with the Gemini models. Long running agentic workflows is really the goal of these agents now, because a lot of the benchmarks are not based off of single use or single question benchmarks. They're basically a lot of the major benchmarks, like the AGI benchmark, is based off of agentic and tool calling. So some of these tasks that they're asking these AI systems to complete do require 10, 20, 30, 40, an hour long to process to be able to get to the answer. So I think that we're going to start seeing these models really start to overfit for long running agentic workflows. So what does that mean for us? Basically, we've been talking about this the past few weeks, the models are no longer the bottleneck, where we're going to be seeing things like Opus 4.5, GPT 5.2. The next generation of models is really going to be focused on who are these orchestration agents. Old models, smaller models that are really fast, those are going to be the models that these orchestrators use in their tool calling. So for instance, you may have GPT 5.2 that may, in some cases, called old school GPT 4.0 or 4.1 mini or nano. That's maybe super fast, maybe a little bit more, not overthink things so much, but using these smaller models as tools, whereas these newer frontier models will be really focused on orchestration and long running agentic problems. So when we're thinking about how we create these models, when we're thinking about the different tools, we can't be thinking about, we'll just throw GPT 5.2 at it, make that the orchestration, and it gives, results that you would want for creative writing or for coming up with ideas for your elf on the shelf. This is where what we do is really going to be important, because we're the ones that know which models to use for different tasks, how to have GPT 5.2 control lots of other sub agents. You're going to be really starting to hear in 2026, as 2025 was the year of the agent. 2026 is going to be the year of orchestrating sub-agents, which is exactly where we have been building to for the past 3 years, right? You have agents that can now control other agents to get very long, complex processes done. And that's going to require expertise to understand what the nuance of these different models are, when to use them, when. And I think that's really setting people that do know these nuances up for success in 2026. Have you all had a chance to look at 5.2 or use it?
I used it when it came out. I don't know, it was on Friday or Sunday. I don't see a big upgrade from the previous one. I think it takes longer for short tasks. It feels like it was rushed, but hey, we
feel like it was rushed. Yeah, I probably agree with that. Probably Sam Red's code red internal. Like, we got to get something out quickly, which also too kind of proves that we're starting to hit I think we're starting to hit a cliff, where an intelligence cliff, where if you remember last year, OpenAI had the 12 days of shitmas. Do you remember that? They rolled out a lot of different models, tools. I think that's when one was, or 03, one of the O models was released. And it seemed like every single one was just, that much better. I think we're starting to really plateau at that. But like what we talked about, whether it was last week or the week before, where we showed, orchestration is what matters, with very even small models, with the whole research paper on having an AI do 1 million correct tasks in a row. I think that this is really, really going to be about orchestration in 2026.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, I think 5.2 is expensive than the previous one, than 5.1. Like 1.5 more expensive than the previous one, and also it take a long. It's for what I read, the real cost isn't the token price; it's the time developers spend compensating the unpredictability of the responses from 5.2.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, $14 per million tokens. That's pretty there. Oh, the GPT-5.2, $168 for 1 million tokens. Is that right? Okay, no one used Pro. That is ridiculous, because I do not see that being worth it, to be completely honest. I do not see that.
I don't know, man. Like, running these GPUs is expensive. It's a lot of energy you have to move around. And I don't believe they are not putting like a value price as well. The stuff you can do with GPT 5.2 Pro. Like, think about like 30 minutes of an AI going hard at a problem and using all the agentic tools it can. I agree with you. I think we're hitting a plateau here, but it's not something bad actually, because we've seen this before. Like, people talk about not needing like bigger, larger models, but rather like super smart models at using tools, branching, orchestrating, planning out, iterating over a flow, a process to achieve the goal you ask, right? The other side, of course, just checked how a 30-minute one for splitting out a transcript, where I just asked for like, give me the top 10 clips, right? And it took 30 minutes to do it. I didn't even realize.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing that this costs money, but I think that, if I put $168 worth of compute, I can almost guarantee you I'd be willing to put $168 and bet you that I could probably get a much better output by using, with good orchestration. I could probably get a better output using Llama, which is a horrible model. Like, I can't really understand why, because some of when you're looking at our own logs, some of the requests, especially when you start doing these agentic, I think the Kimi K2, when I went through and asked it to, research all of our linear tickets, go through and do the GitHub requests. I mean, I think it burned through about 500,000 or a million tokens, right? Was these 4 slides worth $168? I'm going to have to go with no.
Yeah, of course.
So I think, I'm even looking at, the $14 per million tokens. That's not really there. So I think this, it just is really important that, as we're starting that you just shouldn't just blindly because it's very easy to change that model name in the API request from, 4.1 nano to GPT 5.2 Pro. And if you're not careful, you could run up a very, very expensive bill with this. So this is I'm just flabbergasted that this is $168 per million tokens. That is ridiculous. Now, if you put it out there and you do 5.2 Pro and it cures cancer, that's worth it. Splitting up your clips from your transcript or writing your presentation, I'm gonna have to go with a big no on that one. I guess moral of the story: make sure you're really looking at the pricing. Good call out on that, Diego.